Hey, good evening, Galion. Thank you for tuning in to Facebook Live. We finished up 2 weeks ago. Right as we were finishing up, we had a couple of questions that came in, and as we're ready to go online tonight, we had questions rolling in. So I'm going to sort of jump away from the usual monologue, if you will, and get right into some questions. One of the ones from 2 weeks ago, which it's still relevant today. There's no answer for it today, as there wasn't really last week, and that is the community's success in recruiting a new grocery store. I really don't have much more to report on that other than the same people who are most directly involved, potential buyer or renter at the Galion West Shopping Center and the landlord over there continue to work to try to put together a deal. And so I'm really, while I'm absolutely concerned about several aspects of that, the leakage of our dollars into other communities and other counties, the inconvenience and difficulty that some have grocery shopping, and the lack of options that we have right now, I'm really not convinced, and I really think there's nothing that can be added. Not convinced that the city government can step in and make a difference. What we can do is support someone who's interested in coming to town, provide any small incentives that might be needed, and certainly roll out the red carpet when a prospect is introduced to us and they're in that stage of negotiating to come to town. So really nothing new to report. As a resident of the community, I find it frustrating, and it's one of the less thans, one of the negatives, if you will, that has happened over the last year or so as our local store kind of went downhill in terms of choices and activity. But it's something that I think, as much as we'd like to have a better answer, that we need to be patient with. Another issue, really, it was a general issue about stormwater, and it had to do with a certain part of town that lies what I would say north of Dorset and south of Hardingway. That whole area has been identified as an area that needs stormwater improvement. And what we've been doing the last several years is building projects that logically and as we can afford them, move that active storm sewered area further and further to being completed. So we've got a project that we'll try to bring into the ground yet this fall or early next year that will connect with some of the other projects that have been built out in that same general vicinity. And then as we go forward, one of our top priorities for use of state public works funds would be to supplement our stormwater fund with state funds in the form of grants and as well possibly loans, and get that job of getting stormwater out of the low spots in the east side of town, in that area roughly from South Street east and to the city limits on the east side, and then as I said before, north side of Dorset and south side of Hardingway. So I think the person that had asked that, had asked our office if they'd come in and talk with me, and I'd certainly be happy to talk with that individual, but other people have that same problem of standing water, and talk a little bit about the pace of our improvements and what we've done, and try to convey to them that there is a plan and it's being worked out in a kind of a logical year-by-year fashion. So I think those were the ones from a couple weeks ago, and then I know as we were ready to come online a few minutes ago, there were a couple more that came in. So Matt, if you've got any other questions that we might want to go to next, let's do that.
Sure. First question tonight came from Loopy. He asked if there's a way for city council meetings to be put in the Galion Enquirer after meetings so that everyone can learn more about what happened.
It's like I would think that might have been an assumed name, but because everybody knows Loopy, we know who that is, and I think it's a good question that he's asking. I think one of the things that's happened in just a few years since the Enquirer has gone from a daily newspaper to a bi-weekly printing is that a lot of that local news has been lost. I made the mistake, I guess, as it turned out, to lament that, or not complain exactly about that as it relates to obituaries and how difficult it is for local members with local residents when a family member or friend passes that you haven't been close to. You often read about it after the person's services have taken place, and I'm sure everybody listening tonight has run into that. So in addition to losing that each meeting covered by a local news reporter, that we've lost other aspects of communication in the community. I would think that if the Inquirer printed every day, we wouldn't have, I wouldn't say stumbled upon exactly, but we wouldn't have gone with a Facebook Live to try to communicate as we are tonight. The other thing I'd say about Loopy's question is, and I wasn't sure what would happen with the streaming of the council meetings beginning this year. We had some changes in composition of city council, and for I think roughly 2 years we'd had different community members had set up and had been able to stream the council meetings. Previous to that, there had been a little bit sporadic, but there was another individual who recorded them, but really hadn't found a way to broadcast those to the internet. I think what's a good idea for council to look at as we move forward is the idea similar to this, and that is broadcasting live or narrowcasting, whatever you call this, podcasting in a certain sense unrecorded, and put those city council meetings. And while I think it would be a stretch of resources and possibly not that productive to put every city council committee meeting online or have that videotaped, I think once you have the equipment and some knowledgeable operators, that's not too far away. So I guess in summary, I agree there have been a lot of communications, things that have been lost in the community with the loss of the daily paper. It's difficult, frequently, just in the last few years when we started this mayoral effort, there were several newspapers, the radio station and a couple different newspapers were at our meetings. I don't want to go back to where they're so exciting that they're that kind of newsworthiness, but since that time, we've really lost that communication, and maybe another way to substitute for that loss is through a live streaming of meetings, and then have them available to be watched on kind of on demand, as this is, every couple of weeks. So maybe a long answer, Loopy, but I think what he's mentioning is there is a loss within the community of what's going on, and it could be replaced by videotaping. So, what else we have?
Okay. Next question tonight comes from Brian. He asks, can the city stop putting return envelopes for electric and water bills in with the bill itself?
We still have, I'm not sure exactly what the point is, we still have a fair number of folks who who mail in their bill. One of the things that we've done to make it hit that question maybe more relevant is there are alternative ways to pay the bills now. But a lot of people take that bill and slot it. I don't happen to be the utility bill payer in my household, so I'll defer a little bit to my wife. You see her sometime, ask her that question. But I think we do that so that if you're returning it, putting it in the night drop box, that there's an envelope to return that in. A lot of people do that rather than go to the counter or use a electronic payment for their bills. So
there's also a way to opt out of that. If you go into your online account, you can opt out of receiving paper bills altogether.
All right, there you go, Matt. You should have put that on a flash card for me so I would read my cue card. But he's right, so thanks for the off-camera help.
You're welcome. No other questions right now. If you maybe wanted to mention some of the events happening this weekend.
Yeah, I think that. Thanks for mentioning that. I think it's funny. Maybe it's a sign of things getting more positive and moving forward. That there is a debate about what we should be doing with our freeze funds and those kinds of things. But one of the things that we made a commitment once the freeze funds became available to the city again, about 18 months after we started, is to build a partnership with the schools. And so that partnership, I think, is evident this week. We're going to have a rededication of tennis courts. You know, they're not, we're continuing to work with the supplier to make sure everything's right, but they sure are in improved state from where they were a year or two ago. And I think that's a positive statement about the way the school and the city work together on projects. And we've just agreed with the city to sort of negotiate, although I don't think it's been passed by council, an extension of a sort of 5-year working agreement so that the schools will continue to use these refurbished, actually rebuilt tennis courts. I think that's a real positive use of freeze funds that really help benefit what's again this year really quite an outstanding girls tennis team. So there's plenty of community use on those tennis courts. I know that because we heard from a lot of tennis players who wondered when it was going to be done. So that's tomorrow afternoon before the council meeting, before the tennis match, and hopefully for the first time in days the sun will shine and things will it'll be a sunny day here in Galion. The other big event that connects to the partnership between the city and the schools is ongoing efforts to make the cross-country Galion Invitational a huge success. And it, I think everyone in town knows, it generates a tremendous amount of bus traffic. But if you've not ever gone out there, it's in a Galion way, it's quite a spectacle, and I mean that positively. There are just literally thousands of people who come to our community and get an opportunity to watch young people in what actually turns out to be a pretty neat spectator sport. So if you haven't gone out, and weather's all right on Saturday, going out and enjoy that. But it speaks to this need for the city and the school to work together to coordinate our efforts to serve the same tax-paying public. And so while there are some points of view that believe that freeze funds shouldn't be invested so heavily in school-related projects, I got to tell you, when we sit down and have that debate, I'm going to continue to consistently point out those areas where there are a lot of community utilization of park facilities or other athletic facilities that coincide and are real important to our athletic department. So those are two sort of school and city-related events this weekend, or school events on city property, let's put it that way. And I think it just underlines that need to work together to make that part of our community a little bit stronger. If there are any other questions, I wanted to say that for me, the only solution I had to that problem on Harding Way West with the water line and the paving was to go with my family on a family vacation. So I got out of here. As I checked in, it was great to hear the progress that was made and how that, while it took longer than some people had hoped, it was completed much sooner than we'd worried about, and got that back open. And the one thing, as I drive up Harding Way now, the last several days at least, it strikes me how the next 2 blocks, meaning the block from the square to Columbus and the block from Columbus to Liberty, it's more apparent that they need to be on our paving list over the next couple of years, because those 2 blocks of that would be Harding Way East are certainly not in the condition of the 2 to the west from Boston on up to the square. So great to get that past us, and certainly a tremendous, I thought, effort on part of our staff to respond to the emergency, and then within the mayor's office and with city council's cooperation, pretty quick identification of the scope of the project. And I thought our mayor's staff, in particular our service director, Nicole Ward, did a great job of coordinating that and getting that back open sooner than I'd expected. And so that's another thing that happened in the recent weeks. And like I said, I had to get out of town. I just couldn't stand the heat.
Okay, sticking with the uptown area.
Yeah. Oh, here comes, I'm going to get more heat.
Question comes from John.
Yeah.
He asks, why can't we have an Oktoberfest?
Yeah, I think we can, and I think what you'll see this year is that there are smaller efforts. The one thing that it's good to try to respond to this type of question as many times as it is asked is the city, as far as city government, has never been responsible for the organizing and all that behind-the-scenes volunteer work that goes into that kind of festival. And quite honestly, after a 1 or 2 year period where the previous organizer had kind of advised the community and other folks that might be interested that he was going to give that up, I think what we find this year is there's likely to be a gap in the full street festival in the uptown area, and it'll be replaced with a couple of weekends where different groups are going to plan smaller events. I think probably what will happen is we'll see which of those smaller events is most successful, and it may then be the core or the hub of something that starts back up that following year. So I think what you'll see throughout the fall are 2 or maybe 3 smaller events, and I know certainly the last I'd heard, the Planet 14 was planning an event based around music and the kind of family fun that they specialize in there in the old Eagles building. So I know that's going on. I also understood there was an arts and jazz festival. I'm not sure if that's still on or not. And then there's some talk down at the depot of some activities that would be more family craft-oriented things. So no big Oktoberfest, and I think it goes to the fact that there just really wasn't a main organizer this year, and I expect either mini festivals in the future or maybe one big organizing effort in 2019.
Mayor, perhaps just a quick clarification regarding a couple of traffic signals in town. In particular, Cindy asks, why does the light at Hardingway and Columbus stay red so long? So maybe just clarifying the change there, and then what happened.
Okay, there's a couple of different answers. I want to say in 2003, I believe it was, folks remember back that long, there was a large ODOT City of Galion signal project. That it's when all the crosswalks were redone, a lot of handicap ramps. And the heart of that project was a computerized signal system that has what's called in the street light, the traffic light business, sort of progressive signaling. So before, if you could think back that far, every light was on a fixed time, much like the church and Columbus light was for so long. And probably from the same era. And those lights turned from red to green on a very fixed time. What's designed now as people come up to the approach streets, in this case Columbus, that there's a triggering that gives you the green light. Okay, so if you're not pulling up and hitting that stop bar, you're not going to trigger that signal system to work. And it's set up so as it's not just Columbus that is signaled, but it are the other signals, so that somebody going from Liberty all the way through to Hardingway, the preference is for them to be able to continue and then allow the side traffic to come in. So kind of a long answer. It's been set up that way at Hardingway and Columbus since 2003. Know a little bit about that, and if somebody really wants to get into the history of that part of it. There's been an ongoing set of decisions that the service director and the chief of police have been working on to decide what to do with some of the lower volume intersections where there's a real mismatch between traffic, average traffic on the routes. And a good example is by the post office with Columbus and Church, which right now I think continues to flash red on Columbus, signaling the driver that Church is going to have preference, and there's eventually will likely turn into a stop sign on Columbus. The other one that I think we're working to try to respond to what we know as the traffic priorities, but we're also trying to respond to public reaction, and that's at Atwood and South Market. So I noticed just this afternoon that the signal was back up there, and from what I've been told, that was in reaction to a few accidents were there and some concerns about the two-way stop that had been, I guess, under a trial basis before that. So I think there's a couple different parts to what's going on with the decisions to remove or to upgrade traffic signals. So a little bit maybe TMI, as they say, a little too much information, but I think it's worth explaining the differences in those three intersections that people have, I think, seen some changes in traffic patterns. So if there's not anything else tonight, doesn't look to be a very not important, I don't want to use that word, but there don't seem to be a lot of issues of consequence on city council meeting. Sometimes I've learned over the years that those meetings without a packed agenda lend themselves to different sorts of fireworks, so you never know. Certainly, as Loopy said, it'd be nice to be able to watch them or read about them, but you're certainly welcome the second and fourth Tuesdays, 7 o'clock, up in the Muni Court building. So hope to see you there. Good night for now.